Hi dear friends and cultural creatives, Bruce Lipton here, author of the best-selling books The Biology of Belief, Spontaneous Evolution, and The Honeymoon Effect. If you've been surfing the web, watching the news, or even looking out your window, you've seen the whole world is in a state of chaos. Well, we can look at things such as racial, religious, economic, social upheavals, but the problem that nobody's really paying attention to is the big overriding problem, and that is human civilization is creating what is called the sixth mass extinction of life on this planet. 5 times in the history of this planet, life was thriving, and some cataclysmic events such as tectonic plate movements or volcanic activity caused the extinction of up to 90% of life. 5 different times this occurred. Well, today, science has recognized we're facing the 6th mass extinction of life, and it's due to human behavior. And the significance is profound because it really emphasizes the important fact that human civilization has been destroying the web of life. We polluted the soil, we polluted the air, and most importantly, we've been polluting the water and upending the whole web of life, which includes us. So we're facing an extinction. But to change from this, we have to recognize we are participants in this evolution. We're not passive agents. And I go, if we go back in history, let's just go back to a time when Newton gave us the mechanics of the universe, something that we all grew up with. The idea that the universe is divided into 2 realms, matter and energy, and that the 2 realms don't really interact with each other. So we were always left with the fact that human life, human bodies being of matter, are disconnected from the energy realm. So this is what we believed. But in 1927, the whole world turned upside down because a new physics was introduced. It's called quantum mechanics. In quantum mechanics, the universe is only a singularity. Everything is energy. That, in fact, what we perceive as matter is strictly an illusion. Well, if we go back to before 1900, about 1895, we recognize that at that time, science said the world was made out of very small particles called atoms. The word atom in Greek means uncuttable, so it meant that the world's smallest particles were atoms, and that there are different kinds of atoms, and they assemble and create the physical world that we experience. Well, this was the basic version of a Newton atom, just a single grain of sand. But around 1895, that vision changed because by 1895, scientists had recognized something very serious, and that was this, that there were smaller particles in the atom. Yeah, there was a nucleus with protons and neutrons and electrons moving around like a little solar system. And yet, we just reduced our physical world to smaller physical parts. But by 1927, the whole world turned upside down because they said, what were those smaller parts made out of? The proton, the neutron, the electron. They came up with even smaller parts called quarks. And then ultimately the big thing that changed the world was they said, quarks are not even physical. Quarks are made out of energy, like nano tornadoes, little force fields, so that the foundation of an atom isn't physical at all. The whole foundation of an atom is actually all energy. So when you look at the smallest particles and you say, my goodness, atoms are made out of energy, but then you say atoms make everything else. And I go, yeah, like us, which also means then we are made out of energy. And this is really a very interesting conundrum because we live in what we perceive to be a physical world. In fact, Einstein even had an interesting saying about it. He said, reality is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. Well, quantum mechanics turns this whole world upside down and says, even though we perceive everything out here that we see and touch as matter, it's all made out of energy. And why this really becomes important is that we must let go of the concept of physical matter, which is very difficult because that's what we grew up in, a whole world of physical matter. So first thing is this, energy is invisible, so that already makes a problem. If energy is invisible, then how can we see everything? And the answer is very simple. That the lights are on. That's not a joke. That's actually a real understanding for this reason. Photons from light sources, when they hit an energy field such as a body, are reflected back. So the point is, you're not seeing my energy body. What you're seeing actually is a veneer of photons from a light source hitting me and bouncing back to you. So you don't really see me. But it's interesting because science has created a whole new kind of technology to look at the human body called scans, like CAT scan or MRI scan. I say what's interesting about these devices is that they look through the body and they can see all the structures. The significance here is very simple. The scans don't read light. The scans only read energy fields. So as you can see in this MRI scan, you can see the vertebrae of a woman's neck, the spinal cord, the tongue, and all the parts. But guess what? You're not seeing anything physical because the device only sees energy fields. So really important part, again, is a really difficult thing, is to let go of the reality of material. But it's very difficult, and I understand that. But let's just go with the premise that we understand everything is made out of energy. And the significance of that is that in our old vision of science, the Newtonian vision, chemicals and atoms were like particles or little marbles or ball bearings. And that during chemistry, what would happen is the particles would come together. And when the particles come together, they create chemistry. So there's a big boom, atoms come together and create chemistry. And I go, but that's an illusion of atoms being physical parts. The real truth is that atoms don't exist that way. Atoms are actually energy vortexes, like nanotornadoes spinning out energy fields. The best analogy or the best image of it is ripples on a pond. Because when you drop a rock into the pond, the energy of the falling rock is then leaving the energy in the water as a force. But the force of that energy is actually causing the water to turn into waves. So interesting part, while you see the ripples, you're not seeing the energy, but you're seeing the shape of energy. So energy is in waves, and the waves interact with each other. There's no physical particles in atoms. If you really understand an atom, it's just two sets of waves, for example, coming together to make chemistry. And when the waves come together, they interact with each other. And that's where our appearance of different structures come from, the interaction of waves. And these are called interference waves, when one wave interferes with another. The most important understanding, though, there is no real physicality to this universe. Everything are these energy waves which have force to them. Collectively, the energy that surrounds us, now remember, wherever you are, there's cell phone energies coming through, television energies, radio energies, even solar energies. You're immersed in an aquarium of energy. And quantum physics gives us a name for this aquarium. It's called the field. The field is what you're immersed in right now. Energy everywhere, all around you right now. And the field is the interacting of the waves of all the different energies that are out there. The most important point about the field is from Albert Einstein's quote. Now listen to the quote. The field is the sole governing agency of the particle. Okay, well, that might sound a little interesting. Let's write it again. The field is the sole governing agency of matter. What does that really mean? It says that the energy around us is actually what is shaping what we perceive as matter. So energy is shaping the expression of matter. And the significance about that, I can illustrate it with this little simple experiment. I take a piece of paper and I get a piece of iron with a file, and I file that iron down, and I get a pile of iron filings, iron dust. I put the iron filings in a salt shaker, and then I sprinkle those iron filings on a piece of paper just like you see right here, and it forms a random pile of iron filings. I say, you can throw this one away and sprinkle another batch. Every time you sprinkle the iron filings, you get a random pile of iron filings. But now we do something very interesting. Before we do it the next time, what we do is we put a magnet underneath the piece of paper. And when you cover it up, you can't see the magnet, but guess what? A magnet has an energy field around it called the magnetic field. It's a force field. And I go, so now we have our plain piece of paper, and I say, well, let's sprinkle the iron filings this time. And as soon as we sprinkle them, all of a sudden, a structure appears, a manifestation of what we would refer to as the magnetic field. It's a pattern. And every time I re-sprinkle the iron filings, I get the same pattern over and over again. The most important observation here is very simple. It says, matter alone, no organization. But when you put matter in a field, you manifest structure. And this is really a demonstration of the fact that it's the invisible forces that give shape to the world that we refer to as the material world. The field is the sole governing agency of matter. Now, to illustrate the simple fact here is that while matter is perceived to have edges, energy has no edges. Energy is just waves moving through space. And the significance is that waves then interact with each other because there's no wall between them. There's nothing physical. And to illustrate that, I'm showing a picture of a pond and it's raining. And every raindrop that hits sets up a set of ripples. And the ripples are like atoms. And if you look at it, one thing you'll notice is this. There are no ripples in the pond that are not touching other ripples. All the ripples in the pond are merging and connecting and entangling with each other. And this becomes profoundly important for this reason, because we are energy beings in a world of energy. Guess what? We're connected to the entire universe. All of us are energy raindrops hitting a pond and all the ripples spreading out, and you're connected to everything and everyone and the stars and the planets. Why? The whole universe is one entanglement of energy ripples. And so you can never be disconnected from the universe. Now, the interesting fact is this. The idea of quantum physics proposed a long time ago in 1927 that consciousness is creating our life experiences. Well, for a lot of people, that was really difficult because we're still locked in the Newtonian matter universe, and it's very hard to let go of that because we grew up with it. It's every day in our life. And then if I'm standing up here and say, well, hey, forget that illusion, everything is energy. Well, it's easy to say, but you're still living in what you perceive to be a mechanical material universe. Well, here comes the interesting part. How can consciousness of our own brain function manifest the experience of this physical world? Because that's principle number one in quantum physics. Consciousness is creating our reality. Well, guess what? We know that brain sets up energy waves. I go, how do you know? I say, well, you can put wires on a person's head, and we call that electroencephalograph. And using the wires, you can read the brain function of that individual. And so when they put the wires on a person's head, the electrical activity of the brain is connected to the wire by conduction. And then we can read what is called the electroencephalograph activity of the brain, which is what? Vibrations. It's all energy. And I go, oh yeah, so my thoughts are energy, but they appear to be locked into my head. That appeared to be true until the development of a new device, not electroencephalograph. It's referred to as magnetoencephalograph. It does the same thing as electroencephalograph, but it reads the magnetic fields of the energy that we're in. And so the significance is this. I'll show you a picture of this technology when it was very brand new, when they were developing it. And you can see there's a person's head and there's a probe at the back of the person's head. And the significance is this. This probe is reading brain function. I go, yeah, but here's the most important part. The probe is not touching the body. The probe is out here. I go, so what does that mean? I'm reading brain function out here. Recognize this very simple fact. Your thoughts are not contained in your head. You're broadcasting your own fields out into the energy fields of the universe. And remember, according to the quantum physics, it's the fields that we generate that shape the world that we experience. Well, before I leave this picture of the old technology, I just want to show you what the new technology of magnetoencephalograph look like today. And all of a sudden you say, oh, look at that big modern machine. But that original picture is actually how they actually created the device. Well, what does all this come down to? It comes down to a simple fact. Our thoughts are not contained in our head. Our thoughts are broadcast out into the field. And I said, but what is the consequence of that? And I said, well, the field is the sole governing agency of matter. Yeah. So what about a thought field? And the answer is absolutely. A thought field is generating a response in the world around us. Now, to give you an example of that, I have a picture here of a person whose head has a tuning fork in it to say that's the vibration of the brain of that individual. And then I have 5 images, which are like goblets or glasses or something like that. And I say, each one has a different image. There's the Dalai Lama. There's the criminal Scarface, the scary guy. There's a couple of Greek statues of love, a picture of the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, very scary people, and a picture of two kids enjoying life. And I say, it depends on what this individual's tuning fork is doing that determines which of these images is going to manifest in their life. So let's just say, for example, this individual is broadcasting fear. And I say, well, which of these images is going to resonate with fear? And all of a sudden we see Scarface, this terrible criminal. I go, yes, if you're afraid of something and you broadcast fear out, the only thing that resonates, that is in harmony with that broadcast, is something that is presenting fear. You put out the vision of fear, and fear will come into your life. That's how it works. But wait, what if the same person is actually envisioning love in their mind? I go, well, then Scarface isn't the one that's going to show up in their life. Somebody like the Dalai Lama could show up in their life. Why? Love resonates with anything that is love. You put out love, and love comes into your life. Now, what's really important about all this information is this. It's not random. What's going on around here in your world? What's going on in your world right now is a manifestation of your consciousness. And again, this is not a new age idea. This is a fundamental principle of the most technically correct, elaborate understanding of the universe, quantum physics. Quantum physics is the science of energy. And it says, yes, we are broadcasting energy, we're broadcasting a field. And the principle, Einstein's so simple. The field is the sole governing agency of the matter that surrounds us. So there's a new understanding, and it's called the law of resonance. Whatever vibration you send out, it will only activate something of the same kind of vibration. That's harmony and resonance. So if you send out a negative thought, then something with a negative vibration will be the one that will respond in your life. Of course, if you send out a love thought, then expect wonderful love things to come into your life, because the law of resonance says what you send out will come back to you. And this is really important, because you have to think about, what are your thoughts? Psychologists will tell you most of your thoughts are negative, disempowering, self-sabotaging, and limiting beliefs. And then we try to live in a world and we find all this resistance that prevents us from aspiring to the wishes and desires that we hold about life. I say, why is all this negative stuff here? And I say, it's not an accident. It's a consequence of our thinking process, our consciousness setting out a field. So the field generates the structure of matter. Well, this is the most beautiful time to bring it up. Dr. Emoto, a dear, wonderful science friend that I met and so fell in love with, was a guy who actually showed us in a laboratory experiments how an energy field shapes matter. So he was the man, of course, that put water into a freezer, but before he put the water in, they put energy into it, consciousness energy. Remember, consciousness is an energy field, so if you hold on to a test tube of water, your consciousness is going through that water and shaping it. Why? The field shapes the character of the water, matter. Well, Dr. Emoto was the one that first demonstrated that to us. And what did he show? He said, well, here an example is a picture where there's a person with a tuning fork. Same person we saw before, but this time, guess what? They're having a thought of love. And they're holding on to the water that Dr. Emoto is going to put into the freezer. And I say, what's the result of having a thought of love? And the answer is the beautiful, wonderful, geometrically designed, the crystals are just absolutely exquisitely beautiful. But I say, but what if the same person, on the other hand, is sending out thoughts of negative? What if they're holding the water and they're a very negative person, a sick person, an unhealthy person in the world, and they're holding that and they're broadcasting that in the water? Then what you're going to see is the following. A picture of fear actually destroys the beautiful geometry of the water and turns it into an ugly mess. And this becomes very critical for our understanding for a very simple reason. Energy interacts with energy. Two extremes of these interactions are called constructive interference, and the other is called destructive interference. Point is very simple. Energies that are empowering send out and empower other things in around the world in which we live. But negative energies, disempowering energies that take away our vitality, they will destroy the structure of the world in which we live. Nothing is clearer than Dr. Emoto's ice crystals. Yeah, love, beautiful geometry of nature. Fear, a blob of ice. And all of a sudden I say, you have to recognize that Dr. Emoto's point is not so much about the water. Dr. Emoto's point is about your consciousness affecting what's all around you. We've always grown up to believe that we're just necessarily victims of the world around us, but quantum physics said, forget that idea. Quantum physics is telling us right now, your thoughts are manifesting this world. And more than that, it's really excited me for this reason. As a scientist for over 40 years, I never believed in spirituality. I was working with genes and proteins and cells, and spirituality never came into my world. But once I started to dive deep into quantum physics, I recognized a profound connection. And I said, what is that? And I said, well, let's look at the definition of the word field. Field means invisible moving forces that influence the physical world. I go, okay, field, invisible moving forces that influence the physical world. And I go, wait, there's another word with the same definition. I go, what is that? I go, spirit. Invisible moving forces that influence the physical world. My God, science of quantum physics is actually returning us to the nature of a universe made out of energy, a field, but a field is also the word for spirit. And as a scientist, I was so excited by this whole revelation because it really tells us about another way of living on this planet. And one of the most important conclusions of this physics is actually published in the journal Nature, one of the most prestigious scientific journals in the world, because it reveals again that quantum physics is emphasizing that field and spirit are the very same thing. So spirit has a scientific foundation to it. The article in Nature, again, one of the most prestigious scientific journals on the planet, is entitled The Mental Universe. And it was by a physicist from a big university in the United States, Johns Hopkins University. And this physicist writes, The Mental Universe. Well, it's an article about everything we just said, about how we must let go of the nature of the physical realm and start embracing the reality of the energy and spiritual realm. Now, it's an article that may be too difficult to read right now, but guess what? I just need to show you the final sentence of this article. And again, remember, Nature, the most prestigious of scientific journals. Just look at this conclusion from Dr. Richard Henry. The universe is immaterial. What he's saying there is what we just said. The universe is not made out of matter. It's made out of invisible energy. So it's immaterial. He writes, the universe is immaterial. It's mental and spiritual. Live and enjoy. Well, I have to tell you right away, as a scientist, it's like, if this is published in Nature, we are making great advances in our world. And it's necessary time for this because human behavior has been so out of sync with nature that we've been undermining the world in which we evolved from. We didn't come separate from nature, we came from nature. And now that humans are destroying the web of life, they haven't caught on to the most important fact. We're destroying ourselves in this process. So this water festival becomes very important to bring what? Attention to the world. Give people an insight to say how vital this water is to our survival. We just looked at it and said, oh, there's enough water for everything. But guess what? Now we're finding there's not enough water. And with climate change, even that's become a very serious question of whether there will be much more water. Who knows what's going on? It's all in a state of chaos. But for us, this is important. Humans have created this problem by lack of understanding of living in harmony with nature. And this whole water festival is to bring attention to the people around this world is, if we want to stay on this planet, if we want to not just survive, but to thrive into the future, we're going to have to learn to live in that harmony with nature. Very interesting point. And Native Americans, the indigenous people, not just Native Americans, the Aborigines in Australia, the Druids in Europe, all of them had the same understanding that this is a garden and that they were gardeners to tend this. We lost that. Now we've been trampling the garden, destroying it as if, don't worry, there'll be another garden. Well, no. And so this is a wake-up call. And what's really important for you to look at right now is a simple fact. As you look around the world and you see all the chaos that's going on, this is a very positive sign. I say, how can this craziness be positive? And the answer is, it's causing us to change the culture of civilization. Because the existing culture of civilization is the one responsible for the mass extinction we're facing. We want to get out of the mass extinction? Well, now it's time to let go of the old system and build a new system. And the foundation for that whole new beginning is right here in the Water Festival. Water is life. Nobody can live without water. You can live without food, but you can't live without water. It's one of the most precious resources on this planet, and look what we've done to it. We're destroying the water that gives us life. And so I really am happy to be here to tell you what, this doesn't mean it's the end. All we have to do is change consciousness. We have to get out of the old belief system and manifest a new belief system, a new one based on harmony and love and a garden and joy and all the wonderful things we would love to experience. Because if we're broadcasting love, then the world will turn into a manifestation of love. It's quantum physics. It's not New Age. This is hard science. And so while you're all gathered here right now, recognize this. This is the beginning of a new future for all of us. And if you think this extinction is 1,000 years from now, I just want to get your attention on this, that we're facing an extinction within the next few decades. So we don't have a lot of time to change. And that you being here in this program means so much to me because I say, yes, there are a lot of people here that want to see us thrive into the future. And all of you are participants. Your consciousness is what's generating our future. So think those wonderful thoughts. Think love. Think joy. Think happiness. Because when that wave manifests from your head, you're going to create that world in front of you. It's beautiful. We can all do it. Collectively, we are the future of the new world. Thank you for your participation in this most important event on planet Earth.